The medieval artifact hiding beneath a 40,000-pound boulder on Lot 8 isn't a single object. It's an entire construction. A man-made stone cradle bonded with mortar that may date to the 1200s, buried in soil, carrying lead levels 11 times higher than anywhere else on the island. Something was built here long before anyone supposedly discovered the money pit, and whoever did the building went to extraordinary lengths to seal a boulder on top of it. Before the lift. The boulder had been sitting on Lot 8 for as long as anyone could remember. Decades of exploration passed it by. Teams dug into the money pit, drilled boreholes across the island, and probed Smith's Cove. All while this massive stone sat in plain sight on a patch of ground that most searchers walked right past. It was treated as nothing more than a landscape feature, part of the scenery rather than part of the mystery. Interesting, sure, but not a priority. The island had bigger targets, or so the thinking went. That changed when the team took a closer look at how the boulder was positioned. The stone wasn't resting naturally on the ground, the way a glacial erratic settles into whatever depression the ice sheet left behind. Smaller rocks had been arranged evenly around its perimeter, spaced with a regularity that can't be explained by erosion or random accumulation. They were holding the boulder in place, the way a setting grips a gemstone. Deliberate, measured, functional. The pattern caught the attention of archaeologists on the team who recognized it immediately. This arrangement matched megalithic construction techniques documented at ancient sites in France and northern Spain, places where large stones were positioned and stabilized using coordinated labor and careful planning. You don't accidentally surround a 40,000-pound boulder with evenly spaced support stones. Someone put them there, and whoever did it understood the engineering well enough to make it last. Before moving anything, the team sent a snake camera into the narrow void beneath the rock. The footage came back with images that raised far more questions than they answered. One frame appeared to show an iron stake driven into the ground, a worked metal object sitting in a space that shouldn't contain anything man-made. Another frame captured a small round object with the color and sheen of a pearl. Deeper in the cavity, the camera picked up lumps shot through with golden-colored veins, material whose luster on screen resembled gold. None of this has been confirmed by laboratory testing. A camera in a tight, dark space gives you visual impressions, not assay results. The iron stake could be a natural mineral formation, and the pearl might just be a pebble catching the light at the right angle. As for the golden veins, pyrite, mica, and half a dozen other minerals can mimic that luster underground. But the combination of what the footage suggested, worked metal, a possible pearl, and gold-veined material all sitting beneath a megalithic-style boulder, was more than enough to justify what came next. The boulder had to come off.
A decision has to be made, and I think it has to be made today.
What Fiona Steele found. A crane rolled onto Lot 8 and lifted the boulder off its base for the first time in what may have been centuries. Daylight hit the ground beneath it, and archaeologist Fiona Steele began excavating directly into the exposed cavity. What she uncovered bore no resemblance to ordinary soil or rubble. The base was a tightly packed, mosaic-like layer of flat stones, arranged in a cradle shape, a curved formation that cradled the space below it the way a bowl holds its contents. Nothing like it had been documented anywhere else on the island. Not in the Money Pit area, not at Smith's Cove, nowhere. This was entirely unique to Lot 8. Steele removed what the team called pinner rocks from the base of the cavity and identified 3 distinct bonding materials holding the entire formation together. The first was a fine powder mortar. The second was a blue-gray clay mixed with charcoal, strikingly similar in composition to the puddling clay found in the Money Pit and on Lot 5, the same clay-based material that had been used to line shafts and tunnels elsewhere on the island. The connection to the Money Pit's construction materials was immediate and hard to dismiss. The third bonding substance was harder than either of the other two, a cement-like material with a completely different texture and density. 3 construction materials in a single formation, each with different colors, compositions, and positions within the structure. This wasn't one person slapping mortar between rocks. The layering and variety of bonding agents suggest either multiple building phases spread across time, one generation building on another's work, or a deliberate engineering approach that assigned different materials to different structural functions. Perhaps one substance handled sealing while another managed waterproofing, and the third provided structural strength. Someone chose those 3 substances for specific reasons, and applied them at specific locations within the formation. That level of intentionality doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen in a single afternoon. Dr. Ian Spooner examined the site and confirmed what Steele's excavation had already made clear. The formation is not natural. The organic matter, the circular rock cradle, and the mortar composition all point to human construction at a scale and sophistication that doesn't match anything from the colonial period on Oak Island. This wasn't a root cellar or a field clearing pile. It was built with purpose, using methods and materials that require knowledge most colonial settlers on this island simply did not possess. The chemistry beneath the stone. Spooner's soil analysis added a dimension that the archaeology alone couldn't provide. Lead concentrations directly beneath the boulder measured at 140 parts per million. The island's baseline sits at 12. That's not a minor elevation or a statistical blip. It's more than 11 times the norm, and in geochemistry, that kind of spike represents a significant industrial signature embedded in the earth. The lead wasn't just present in the soil. It was migrating through layers of ash and coal, which Spooner identified as consistent with burning or smelting activity. High heat and lead-bearing materials had been present at this location, and the residue had worked its way into the surrounding earth over what appears to be a long period of time. Whether the activity involved metallurgical processing, lead-based construction materials, or some other industrial purpose remains an open question. But chemistry at this concentration doesn't happen on its own. It requires a sustained source over time. And the most common sources of lead in ash and coal deposits are smelting operations and metalworking. The kind of activity that involves furnaces, fuel, and raw ore. The profile doesn't match the agricultural use Samuel Ball put the land to in the 1800s. Ball farmed Lot 8. He grew crops. Colonial farming does not generate lead concentrations 11 times above baseline through layers of ash. The chemical evidence beneath the boulder belongs to a different kind of activity entirely. Emma Culligan and Spooner tested the bonding materials and placed the construction within a dating window from the post-1200s to the pre-1800s. That's a broad range, and the upper end would place the construction comfortably within the colonial period. Unremarkable, if disappointing. But the lower end is what changes everything. If the mortar dates to the 1200s, it predates every known European activity in Nova Scotia by centuries. The earliest documented European presence in the broader region, Norse settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, dates to roughly the year 1000, and that site sits hundreds of miles to the north. French and English colonial settlement in Nova Scotia didn't begin until the 1600s. Mortar from the 1200s on Oak Island would fall into a gap in the historical record that has no accepted explanation. A window of time when, according to every mainstream account, nobody from Europe was anywhere near this part of the Atlantic coast. The cross that connects the timeline. The boulder excavation doesn't exist in isolation. At a completely different location on the island, another artifact had already established that medieval-era objects are present on Oak Island, and that artifact's chemical signature points to a specific region of origin. In Season 5, Gary Drayton and Rick Lagina recovered a small, lead cross on the opposite side of the island from Lot 8. It was hand-carved with a square hole at the top, found in mud near rocks along the shoreline. Not buried deep, not hidden inside a structure, just sitting in the muck at a tidal location as if it had been lost or discarded centuries ago and gradually absorbed into the shoreline sediment. The cross was sent to Tobias Skowronek at the German Mining Museum for lead isotope analysis. His results were precise. The lead matched medieval mines in southern France, specifically the Cevennes and Montagne Noire mountain ranges. The isotopic signature did not match any mines active from the 1500s through the 1700s. It matched older sources that were being worked during the medieval period. Skowronek concluded the cross dates to before the 15th century. Templar researcher Jerry Glover examined the cross and identified a resemblance to crucifixes carved into the walls of Dom prison in France, where Templar knights were held after the arrests of 1307. A similar shape also appeared on a pillar in a 13th century church in Whitchurch, England. The visual parallels are suggestive rather than conclusive. They place the cross in a design tradition associated with the Templars and their era. But visual resemblance alone doesn't prove Templar origin. Plenty of medieval crosses share similar proportions without any connection to the order, and dating a cross by its shape alone would not hold up to serious scrutiny. What matters for the Boulder's story is simpler and more grounded than any Templar theory. The lead cross from Smith's Cove and the mortar beneath the Lot 8 boulder represent two independent medieval evidence lines recovered from two entirely different locations on the same small island. The cross gives a geographic origin, southern France, and a time frame of pre-1500s. The boulder gives a construction date range whose lower bound overlaps with exactly that period. Neither finding depends on the other for its significance, but together, they describe a pattern that becomes increasingly difficult to explain as coincidence. What it means together. Step back and look at the evidence the boulder excavation produced across three distinct levels. The first is physical, a stone cradle and mosaic foundation bonded with three types of mortar, each applied deliberately. That's engineered construction, not natural geology. The second is chemical, lead at 140 parts per million, migrating through ash and coal in a pattern consistent with industrial burning or smelting at concentrations that dwarf the island's baseline. The third is chronological, mortar dating whose lower bound reaches the 1200s, centuries before any documented European presence in this part of North America. The lead cross from Smith's Cove contributes a fourth dimension, geographic origin. Medieval French lead, isotopically matched to mines in the Cevennes and Montagne Noire, in a hand-carved cross dating to before the 1500s. Two sites on the same island, two different types of evidence, both pointing toward medieval European activity that falls well outside every accepted historical narrative for this region of the world. Consider what the alternatives would need to explain. Natural geology would need to produce a mosaic stone foundation in a cradle shape bonded with three different materials. No known geological process generates that kind of structure. Colonial-era agriculture would need to generate lead concentrations 11 times above baseline through layers of ash and coal, despite no historical record of metalworking on Lot 8 during Ball's ownership. And coincidence would need to account for two independent sets of medieval-dated evidence at two separate locations on one small island, both with characteristics pointing to the same broad time period and the same part of Europe. The excavation isn't finished. The team opened the site in Season 13, lifted the boulder, documented the cradle and the mortar, and ran the chemical and dating analyses. But the full depth of the void beneath the formation remains unexplored. Whatever was important enough to construct a stone cradle around and then seal beneath a 40,000-pound boulder with megalithic support stones, that hasn't been reached yet. The bottom of this site is still an open question, and until someone digs deeper into what the cradle was built to protect, the most important part of the story remains underground. What Fiona Steele uncovered is a foundation. That word works in both senses. It's a literal foundation, a built structure with mortar and stonework, and it's an evidentiary foundation, a base of physical, chemical, and chronological data that points consistently and from multiple independent angles toward the same conclusion. Activity on Oak Island that is medieval in origin. The cradle beneath the boulder doesn't answer every question about who was here or why, but it narrows the timeline dramatically, and it does so with the kind of hard, testable evidence that speculation alone has never been able to provide. Beneath Lot 8's boulder sits something no one expected. Engineered medieval construction with an industrial chemical signature sealed under 40,000 pounds of stone. The mortar, the lead, and the cradle all point to activity that predates the money pit by centuries. For the full story of what the team found when they pushed past 200 feet into the money pit, and why the depth data reframes the entire search, check out that video right now.